All right, let's talk about something that for so many of us is just tricky: sexual wellness. It's often this area of our lives filled with way more anxiety than joy. But what if there was a better way to think about it all? Today, we're diving into the work of psychosexual therapist Kate Moyle to really unpack a new philosophy for intimacy, one that's about connection, not perfection. So here's our game plan. We're going to start by talking about why this is all so hard to talk about in the first place. Then we'll bust some major myths that are probably holding you back. After that, we'll get into what the real foundation of intimacy is, look at the tools you need for your inner world, and finally, we'll reframe this whole thing as a lifelong journey. Okay, first things first, we have to break the silence. You know, Kate Moyle calls sexual wellness the final frontier of unspoken truths. Think about it. We have plans for our fitness, our finances, our mental health, but this part of our lives, it usually gets ignored. The very first step toward making things better isn't some fancy technique. It's literally just giving ourselves permission to have the conversation. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. The pressure we feel to have this perfect, flawless, intimate life is exactly what gets in the way. Moyle's whole point is that the second we allow ourselves and our partners to be messy and imperfect, well, that's when we create the safety for real intimacy to actually grow. So once we're okay with not being perfect, we can start to tackle the big myths that mess with our expectations. These are those stories we've all absorbed from culture that cause so much stress. And honestly, the biggest one of them all has to be the myth of spontaneous desire. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. We see it in movies all the time, that sudden, out-of-nowhere lightning bolt of passion. But Moyle points out that for a lot of people, that's just not how it works. The reality is often something called responsive desire. It's not a lightning bolt, it's more like a slow burn that you have to intentionally build. And here's the game-changing part. For many of us, desire actually comes after arousal, not before it. Just hearing that can be such a relief. It means you're not broken if you don't feel that sudden spark out of the blue. It just means you need the right conditions, the right environment for desire to show up. So how do we create those conditions? Moyle has this brilliant practical idea. Think of your desire like an ecosystem. You've got accelerators, the things that turn you on, and then you have brakes, the things that totally shut you down, like stress, being exhausted, or, staring at a giant pile of laundry. The whole game is about hitting the brakes less and hitting the accelerators more. And the other huge myth we gotta talk about is this idea of digital perfectionism. We're surrounded by these perfectly curated images of what sex and intimacy are supposed to look like. Moyle says this creates a spectator effect. It's like we're watching ourselves from the outside, judging our own performance, instead of actually being in our bodies and feeling the moment. This leads us right into our third section, building a real foundation for intimacy. Now that we've kind of cleared away some of the junk, we can focus on what actually moves the needle. And according to Moyle, the most important work happens way before you even think about the bedroom. It's all built on two things: great communication and managing your environment. We tend to think that talking about sex is what you do after something goes wrong, like a debrief. But Moyle wants us to totally flip that script. Communication is the ultimate foreplay. It's the ongoing conversation that builds trust and psychological safety, and that's the stuff that's absolutely essential for real connection. And speaking of safety, let's talk about stress, because it's a huge killer of intimacy. As you can see here, it's pretty direct. When your stress levels are through the roof, your body goes into fight or flight mode, and that survival state is the complete opposite of the relaxed state you need for pleasure. Your body literally cannot be on high alert and open to connection at the same time. So what do we do about that? Moyle gives us this super practical tool: create a transition zone. It's basically a little ritual to leave the stress of the day behind. It could be setting a hard boundary with your work phone, taking a walk together, or having dinner with no devices. It's about consciously shifting gears from your get-it-done self to your present, sensual self. Okay, so we've worked on the external stuff. Now let's move on to our fourth section and turn inward. This is all about mastering our inner world, and the two biggest tools we have for that are mindfulness and really understanding our own emotional wiring. I mean, this quote just says it all, right? Mindfulness is the practice that helps us quiet that voice in our head, the one that's always judging and worried about performance. When we can focus on our breath and what we're actually feeling in our bodies, we get out of our heads and into the moment, which is where all the good stuff happens. The other big internal piece of the puzzle is understanding our emotional blueprint. the way we connected with our caregivers when we were kids, actually creates these patterns or attachment styles that follow us into our adult relationships. They quietly run the show when it comes to how we handle closeness and vulnerability. And they generally fall into a few common types. Someone with an anxious style might need a lot of reassurance to feel safe. On the other hand, someone with an avoidance style might feel smothered by too much closeness and pull away. Just knowing your own pattern and your partner's is like having an emotional roadmap. It doesn't mean you won't hit bumps, but you can navigate them together with so much more understanding. And that brings us to our final big idea. We need to stop thinking about intimacy as some static thing you achieve and start seeing it for what it is, a dynamic, lifelong journey. It's all about embracing change. This is such a liberating thought. Life happens, right? We have kids, we get older, our bodies change. Instead of seeing these changes as a loss or a decline, Moyle says we should see them as chances to grow and find new ways to be close and connect with each other. And a huge part of being on that journey is just letting go of all the pressure to perform and bringing back a sense of play and curiosity. It's about taking the pressure off, being able to laugh at the awkward moments, and approaching your partner with a beginner's mind, like you're always getting to know them all over again. Because in the end, this is about so much more than just what happens in the bedroom. As Moyle says, when we heal this one part of our lives, we're really healing a core piece of what it means to be human. It's a path to being more authentic, more connected, and more ourselves. So, we'll leave you with this to think about. If you could just strip away all the myths, all the pressure, all the expectations, what would genuine, fulfilling intimacy actually look like for you? It's a powerful question, and answering it for yourself is where the journey really begins.